Hey everybody, this one is about Europe is under a military occupation. I've been getting emails from people in Europe um, who are, under attack for one reason or another. And so I thought this would be a good way to go into some of that. Um, Anyways, whoops, went too far. Um, a few of the reasons I became aware, just to give you some background information on how I became aware of this. First of all, I was involved with the Republic of Texas, and if there's any group that's on the leading edge as far as the freedom movement is concerned, I would say it would be the Republic of Texas. Those guys are just the greatest bunch of guys, and they are, it's like they're on the leading edge of freedom and what's happened and what we can do to free ourselves. Anyways, one of the things they are looking at doing is bringing an action with the Human Rights Commission, the UN Human Rights Commission, and as a result of that, um, there was a document that I got from them. That was a document that was prepared by a lawyer, and it was about 1,000-page document. It was related to a guy in Hawaii that had had his house stolen by the bankster thieves. And this lawyer was going through and talking about the military occupation and how the banksters were pillaging and all of the terminologies that are used in a military occupation. So, anyways, um, it really got my attention. So, um, and I've talked about that in some of these other videos about the military occupation, and we'll talk about the military occupation. Matter of fact, that's the next slide here, is martial laws. Here are some of the other videos that I've done. There's one called Martial Laws Here and has been for decades, and there's a link to the YouTube video. And then we are under martial law, another link to that video, and martial laws coming from the United Nations. Now, I have um, YouTube has shut down or basically stopped their program where I could have a subscription-based um, um, access to my subscription-based YouTube channel. Um, and then on top of that, vid.me is shutting down too. If you go there, they'll tell you they're shutting it down on the 15th of December, which is only a week away. And so the bottom line is that I have taken all of those subscription-based videos and made them available on my website. And I've also, because YouTube isn't a very user-friendly place for searching for videos, especially when it's my videos, and so I have put links to a large portion, not all of them, but a large portion of my videos with a description on my website. And so when you go to my webpage, sovereigntyinternational.fyi, the first thing, if you look around, you'll see that there's a link to a web page where that's got all my free videos or a bunch of them, and then also a link to or a button to click if you want to subscribe to the exclusive videos. Anyways, so um, these videos will be there as well. Um, anyways, so one of the symptoms, so what are the symptoms of martial law? One of the symptoms is that martial law supersedes and replaces common law. So you go into one of these so-called courts and the judge says the Constitution doesn't apply in here and I don't want to hear another word about it. And that's telling you that there's no common law in there, okay? That's telling you a whole bunch of things. This is taken from the Causes and Necessities for Taking Up Arms, 1775. This is what happened, which precipitated the War of Independence. And well, let's read the cite first. Statutes have been passed extending courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial. and for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter. We saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. And so the reason for the War of Independence, okay, the reason, this is what it's saying, okay, the causes and necessities for taking up arms in 1775. The reason the colonists took up arms is because they saw that they were getting martial law imposed upon them. And that's all the more reason why they want to be very subtle, okay? They don't want people to find out that that we're under martial law, because there'll be an open revolt. And so they're trying to keep this under wraps. They don't want people to figure out, and they want to gradually squeeze and enslave you. Okay, that's the whole objective. Okay, is slavery. That's what it's all about. Anyways, so they don't want anybody to know what's happening. They want to be very subtle and just a little bit here and a little bit there. I mean, what does the Declaration of Independence say? It says, when in the course of human events that well, not in the Declaration of Independence, but it talks about it elsewhere. When oh, it does say it in the Declaration of Independence. I don't have it here, but it talks about how that the despotism is got only one object, and it's despotism and a dictatorship. Okay, and so that's what martial law is a dictatorship. But anyway, so let's keep going. This is taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ella to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. In the meantime, civil law is the form of law imposed in the Roman Empire, which was largely, if not wholly, governed by martial law rule. Equity has always been understood to follow the law. To have superior equity is to turn things on their head. This is exactly what happens when martial law is imposed. If equity is a law, then it follows its own course, thereby rather than following the common law, thereby destroying the common law and leaving what is called equity in its place. So this Judge H. Ellett explains it in a little bit different way, but they're basically talking about how under equity, and so all these courts are courts of equity or courts of martial law, either one, it doesn't matter, it's all martial law. And where the bought and paid for a clerk masquerading as a judge will say, I can do anything I want in here. And he can, okay, because there's no common law. He can do literally anything. And there's and again, it goes to the fact that there's no common law. And that's another symptom. There are no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command or crimes, okay? And a lot of times what they'll do, like in Canada, they'll pass statutes that say that judges can do anything they want. And that's the United States, no common law offenses. So that's another symptom, okay? Because remember, martial law supersedes and replaces common law. So then they have to pass statutes for common law crimes like rape, treason, murder, those kinds of things. And of course, the ones that they don't like infanticide, where you're murdering your unborn children, they conveniently forget to pass those kinds of statutes. And then they go and authorize their bail priests in their courts authorize people to murder their unborn children. Anyways, under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. Legislature may create an offense in the same enactment, provide exceptions to its application. Again, that's all symptoms of martial law. Everything's an admiralty. A writ of error doth not lie in a sentence in admiralty, but an appeal. Okay, and so and that's taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, but they're by citing Book 4 of Coke's Institutes in the Laws of England. It goes back to the 1500s. And so why do you think there's all these courts of appeal all over the place? Okay, that's all admiralty. This is the same thing that precipitated the War of Independence. And one of the things that I wanted to say is that I'm going to be adding some end screens and things like that to my videos about the Republic of Texas. And I would encourage you to subscribe to their YouTube channel as well, because if you want to stay on the leading edge of of the freedom movement, I would encourage you to be in contact with the Republic of Texas in some way. Now, whether you're staying in Texas or not, if you're not in Texas, well, then you can't really be involved in the Republic of Texas. But certainly, if you are in Texas, then we need people to participate. Anyway, so back to the topic at hand. Some more martial law symptoms. Police use military rank structures like captain, lieutenant, sergeant. The military script circulates for money, which is Federal Reserve notes, Bank of Canada notes, Bank of England notes. Military uniforms are used by police, judges, etc. What do you think that black robe that judge is wearing? If it was a common law judge, he'd be wearing a business suit. And as far as the police is concerned, a county sheriff used to just have a star. That's it. Okay. And the wearing of clerical dress or religious habit on the part of layfolk is liable to the same penalty on the part of the state as the misuse of a military uniform. And that's Article 10 of the Concordat of 1933 between Hitler and the Roman cult. So conspiracy theorist is someone who questions the statements of known liars. I guess I'm a conspiracy theorist. Anyways, this is Article 1 of the Lieber Code. A place, district, or country occupied by an enemy stands in consequence of the occupation under martial law of the invading occupying army, whether by proclamation declaring martial law or any public warning to the inhabitants has been issued or not. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation or conquest. The presence of a hostile army proclaims its martial law. That's the physical presence of the army. Okay, there's a whole bunch of ways that we can show that it's under martial law. Number one is in Europe in particular. Okay, this is Europe that we're talking about. Well, I mean, what do you think went on with World War II? Every country in Europe was invaded at one point or another, just about, and so that's why there's martial law. Think about it. I can't think of any country that didn't have all or part of the country invaded by a military force of some sort. And so that's the whole. I think that's the reason they want these world wars to get going, so they can impose martial law. And then of course they're not going to tell people about it. And the people, if they're freedom-minded people, then they'll certainly be very subtle and make them think that there's common law is still there and they still have the law of the land, and then gradually change things over time. And that's the whole idea of Roman civil law. Okay. You look at a map, do a search on the internet for common law countries versus civil law countries, and you'll find out that there's very few common law countries left on the planet. Now, I can tell you that I've seen old court cases in Europe that talk about common law. And so all of Europe used to be common law, and now none of it is. Except maybe England, and that's certainly questionable. Anyways, this is the law and customs of war on land, Hague Convention 4, Article 42. Territory is considered occupied when it's actually placed under the authority of the hostile army. The occupation extends only to the territory where such a third authority has been established and can be exercised. And so, again, they're defining all of this stuff. Article 2 of the Lieber Code. Martial law does not cease during the hostile occupation except by special proclamation ordered by the commander-in-chief or by special mention in the Treaty of Peace concluding the war, when the occupation of a place or territory continues beyond the conclusion of peace as one of the conditions of the same. So you think about it, unless there's a proclamation or a Treaty of Peace. Okay, now, so most of Europe was invaded by the Nazis, by the Germany, and then basically the U.S. Invaded and took it all back, U.S. or Canada, the Allies, and so there was no Treaty of Peace. Okay, it was invaded and it was liberated, if they want to call it that, and so then the end result is there was no Treaty of Peace, and I have never seen a proclamation where it talks about martial law ending. Okay, so martial law is still in place. Okay, there's only two ways that martial law can end. It's got to be special mention in the Treaty of Peace. Now, there are Treaty of Peaces, like, for example, the Treaty of Hidalgo, which is between the U.S. and Mexico with the war between the U.S. and Mexico in the 1840s. There's the Treaty of Hidalgo. And but that doesn't say anything about ending martial law. Okay, so in Arizona and New Mexico and those areas that the U.S. got as a result of that martial law, they're still under a military occupation. And so, unless there's a special proclamation ordered by the commander in chief or a special mention in the Treaty of Peace, it's got to specifically say the martial law ceases. We now live in a nation where doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, and press destroys information, religion destroys morals, and our banks destroy the economy. Well, hello, folks. What do you think that is? That's all symptoms of martial law. They're squeezing. They think they can do anything they want, and these bankster thieves and their Roman cult handlers are starting to squeeze. Hello? Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administering Your Public Service. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information shares, a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries, and other books and forms, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. And donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. Okay, this is Article 2 of the Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilians in a time of war of 1949. And in addition to the provisions which shall be implemented in peacetime, the present convention shall apply to all cases of declared war or of any other armed conflict which may arise between two or more of the high contracting parties, even if the state of war is not recognized by one of them. The convention shall also apply to all cases of partial or total occupation of the territory of a high contracting party, even if the said occupation meets with no armed resistance. Gee, that sounds like most of Europe. And I'm not talking about the no armed resistance, although some of them, a lot of them, the Germany just walked in. And some of them, there was no actual state of war. Like, for example, when the Germans walked into Austria, okay, they just walked in. Although one of the parties in conflict may not be a party to the present convention, the powers who are parties thereto shall remain bound by it in their mutual relations. They shall furthermore be bound by the convention in relation to the said power, if the latter accepts and applies the provisions thereof. So again, this is basically covering every possible scenario. This is taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court that we talked about earlier in the case Diet versus Turner. And it says, note, under the law martial, only the criminal jurisdiction of a military court is the recognized law. But as Article 3 says, the civil courts can continue wholly or in part as long as the civil jurisdiction does not violate the military orders laid down by the commander-in-chief or one of his commanders. By this means, a military venue, jurisdiction, and authority are imposed upon the occupied populace under the disguise of the ordinary civil courts, and officers of the occupied district or region, because of the so-called civil authorities in an occupied district or region, only act at the pleasure of a military authority. It should also be noted here that the several state legislatures, county boards of commissioners, and city councils are constantly legislating to please the edicts of the federal government, which is the occupying force, and that their legislation in this sense is not an exercise of state sovereignty, but instead a compliance with the edicts of the military force which occupies the several states, and consequently are edicts of martial law rule. And so this is talking about the U.S. In particular, Civil War, okay, states that were occupied by the Civil War. And so, but the point is it still applies like in Europe or anywhere where there's an occupying force. And so it's part of maintaining the illusion that you have lawful government, okay? These pirates, these bankster thieves don't want you knowing that you're under martial law, because there'll be an open revolt overnight. Okay, the people will revolt. They will not put up with that crap. And so they don't want people figuring that stuff out. This is Article 6. The present convention shall apply from the outset of any conflict or occupation mentioned in Article 2. In the territories of parties to the conflict, the application of the present convention shall cease on the general close of military operations. In the case of occupied territory, the application of the present convention shall cease 1 year after the general close of military operations. However, the occupying power shall be bound for the duration of the occupation, to the extent that such power exercises the functions of government in such territory by the provisions of the following articles of the present convention. And there's a whole bunch of them. Okay, and we're going to go through some of those articles. So for the duration of the occupation, the occupying power is bound to abide by these articles of the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of civilians in a time of war of 1949. We're going to go through a bunch of them. We won't go through all of them. We're under martial law. There's 3 kinds of martial law. There's full martial law, there's martial law proper, and there's martial law rule. That's a U.S. Supreme Court case. The full martial law is when you have military troops on the street. The martial law proper is the law of the armed forces, and the martial law rule is the very subtle thing that you see going on nowadays. And that's actually taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by this Judge A.H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court. But he's citing Ex parte Milligan, which is a U.S. Supreme Court case. Again, we're talking about some of the evidence of the martial law rule as military script circulated for money, banknotes, police use the rank structures of captain, lieutenant, sergeant, military rank structures. Police refer to us as civilians. Courts work on presumption. Anytime there's a curfew, and I'm sure you hear about curfews from time to time. Well, that's martial law. State regional areas under metro government provide a military venue for the peace officers to enforce martial law jurisdiction. Okay, so Toronto Metro Police, Dallas Metro Police, you see these Metro Police in major cities all over the place. Bar members who are foreign agents of the United Nations are the officers of the court. And the wearing of clerical dress or religious habit by layfolk is liable to the same penalty as the misuse of a military uniform. Okay, at common law, there's no military uniform. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on vid.me. Okay, I got to eliminate that because vid.me is shutting down in another week. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit. Don't forget to like this video on YouTube. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. And on Steemit, don't forget to vote and make your comments. I've also got a channel on BitChute, but I've got a bunch of videos uploaded there, but certainly not all of them. This is my YouTube channel, and you notice that the subscribe button is clicked. It's normally red. It's clicked. It's got the check mark there. The arrow is pointing at the bell. And the bell, when you click the bell, it'll show that it's vibrating, which notifies you of any uploads. This is Steemit, and the left arrow is pointing at where you can make your upvotes. The middle arrow is how many upvotes this particular article got, and the right arrow is where you can make comments. And all of that is good on Steemit. This is Steemit again, where you click. You see the little hand there, clicking on Crypto Wallet, and where you can do that if you want to follow me, then, or you can unfollow me, whichever you want to do. So this is all about contracts, okay? They have to get you into a contract, okay? But what they do is they use their law merchant, and all they need is a contract. It's impossible to prove jurisdiction exists absent a substantial nexus with the state, such as a voluntary subscription to license. All jurisdictional facts supporting claim that the supposed jurisdiction exists must appear on the record of the court, and that's U.S. Supreme Court. This is all tied to the Roman cult. the Sestake Trust. Okay, Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. That's the Roman cult, folks. For when they were driven out of all their former holds, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits, while the season of the land remained in the nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. That's the Roman cult, folks, and that exists to this day. To be bound in conscience to account to Sestake youths for the rents and emoluments of the estate. Well, that's taxes, folks. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. Yeah, it's an extortion racket is what it is. Anyways, so what you have under martial law is you have clerks masquerading as judges. Remember, there's no common law. They have to pass statutes. Well, when acting to enforce a statute and its subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer, a bought and paid for clerk, and not in a judicial capacity. Courts administrating and enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely acts as an extension, a bought and paid for clerk, as an agent for the involved agency, but only in a ministerial, not a discretionary capacity. They're being told what to do. It's the accepted rule, not only of state courts, but of the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a bought and paid for clerk. Judges have become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature, and otherwise act as bought and paid for clerks. Where any state proceeds against a private individual in a judicial form, it's well settled that the state, county, municipality waives any immunity to counters, cross-claims, and complaints by direct or collateral means regarding the matters involved. Okay, well, they're talking about a void judgment here. Think about it. We'll talk about it here in a little bit about void judgments, okay? They're talking about a void judgment. When enforcing mere statutes, judges of all courts do not act judicially and thus are not protected by qualified or limited immunity. And there's the kangaroo court. You see the little kangaroo judge up there and the kangaroo bailiff and the liars, the kangaroo liars. Immunity for judges does not extend to acts which are clearly outside their jurisdiction. A clerk masquerading as a judge is not competent to do anything judicial like issue orders or warrants. A clerk masquerading as a judge is operating in his private capacity and has no immunity. It is the Matrix, okay? Think about it. It's the movie The Matrix. Things are not what they appear. Everything is an illusion. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. Where there is no jurisdiction, there is no judge. The proceeding is as nothing, okay? It's a commercial transaction. It's a gang of thieves. They're a bunch of criminals. Such has been the law from the days of Marshal Say, and that's a federal court case citing Book 10 of 10 Coke 68, which is Coke on the laws of England, which goes back to the 1500s, and that is cited by the U.S. Supreme Court in Bradley versus Fisher, 13 Wallace 335. Anyway, so here's some English court cases. Since we're talking about Europe, we'll talk about English court cases about void judgments. A void order results from a fundamental defect in proceedings or from a without jurisdiction ultra vires act of a public body or judicial office holder. A without jurisdiction ultra vires act is any act which a court did not have power to do. Similarly, if the higher court's order is founded on a lower court's void act or invalid claim, then the higher court's decision will also be void. And there's your kangaroo court again. Although an appeal is not necessary to set aside a void order, if permission to appeal is requested and if out of time, the court should grant permission because time does not run because the order is void and the person affected by it has the right to have it set aside. So Again, avoid judgment. You can attack it collaterally at any time or place. The appeal court should grant you permission to see it, to hear it, because it's void. And they have a duty to declare that it's void. A void order is incurably void, and all proceedings based on an invalid claim or void act are also void. Even a decision of the higher courts will be void if the decision is founded on an invalid claim or void act, because something cannot be founded on nothing. It is never too late to raise the issue of nullity, and a person can ignore the void order or claim and raise it as a defense when necessary. You can raise it any time or place. Collaterally doesn't matter. A thing void in the beginning does not become valid by lapse of time. These are maxims of law. Time cannot render valid an act void in its origin. Things invalid from the beginning cannot be made valid by a subsequent act. Once a fraud, always a fraud. What is otherwise good and just, if sought by force or fraud, becomes bad and unjust. Check out my my subscription channels. Vid.me is shutting down on the 15th of December. My YouTube channel called Sovereignty International, I had to make it free. Okay, so YouTube was basically going to shut it down at the end of December, so I just went ahead and made it free, and I put the exclusive content. It's private, but I can add people to watch it, and those are the people that will subscribe on my website. So the exclusive content is available on my website. I have 2 subscription levels. One of them is just to watch the videos, and another one is for unlimited consultations. The only power, now one of the things I want to mention about these consultations is I'm not a liar, okay? I meant lawyer. No, I meant liar. Anyways, the bottom line is that I cannot, all I can do is, as far as the consultations are concerned, is I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances. And I can tell you where to find forms, and so you can modify them. And so that's what the consultations will consist of. Anyways, the only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, and I cannot fight all the battles. I need other people fighting the battles and being on point. I'm currently publishing a video a week. Some of the exclusive content is an Arlington private information share, land deed training, estoppel certificates training, foreclosure estoppel certificates training, corporate denial training, toll roads notice and demand training, invoice training, notice of void judgment training, revocation of signature training, third-party witness training, federal habeas corpus training, revocation of voter registration, criminal complaint training. Now, there's upcoming stuff that's going to be some lawsuits training and other training requests, and also criminal complaint training is going to be up there too as well. All of the forms, files, and other instructions are available for free on my 2 private groups at Yahoo and Google. Okay, if you want this training, and these things are above and beyond, and that's why they're exclusive. But if you want to just go and get the forms, you're more than welcome to do that, and go ahead and fill them out. You watch my videos, you get the idea, and understand what's going on. Then you can go ahead and manipulate the forms yourself. You don't need to subscribe. If you want me to give you ideas on what to do, you want my consulting services, or you want access to these training videos, then you're going to have to subscribe. All exclusive content, well, it's not going to be on vid.me. I got to make some changes to all of this stuff, don't I? Anyways, a penal action is an action on a penal statute, okay? I have a video called Do-It-Yourself Kangaroo Courts number 12. It talks about how there's no criminal, it's all civil, okay? It's all commerce, okay? Remember, a war is a giant commercial transaction. All warfare is commerce. All commerce is warfare. So they're just doing business. These people are nothing but a bunch of pirates. They're thieves, and they're doing business. Anyways, a penal action is an action on a penal statute, an action for recovery of penalty given by statute. Okay, remember, there's no common law, so because there's no common law, they have to pass statutes. So all these statutes, and remember, the judge is a bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge, so they just go ahead and assault you with one of their little statutes. Okay, where an action is founded entirely upon a statute, the only object of it is to recover a penalty or forfeiture. Such action is a penal action. See, these are all, again, for the slaves. They got to get you into one of their contracts. If you think that this is for your protection, you clearly have no idea what's going on. It's time to wake up, folks. The words penal and penalty in their strict and primary sense denote punishment, whether corporal or pecuniary, imposed and enforced by the state for a crime or offense against its laws. The noun penalty is defined forfeiture or to be forfeited for non-compliance with an agreement. Okay? It's all commerce. It's all contracts. The words forfeit and penalty are substantially synonymous. A penal action is one founded entirely on statute. Remember, the judge is a bought and paid for a clerk, so it's a kangaroo court. There's no judge. It's all prejudged. Okay. And anyways, a penal action is one founded entirely on statute, and the only object is to recover a penalty or a forfeiture imposed as a punishment for certain specific offense, while a remedial action is one is brought to obtain compensation or indemnity. A penal action is a civil suit brought for the recovery of a statutory forfeiture when inflicted as punishment for an offense against the public. Such actions are civil actions, on the one hand closely related to criminal prosecutions, and on the other hand to private injuries, in which the party aggrieved may by statute recover punitive damages. That's why if you nail the Satanist bail priest that's masquerading as a judge up front down there, nail him down, he'll tell you it's quasi-criminal. Well, look up quasi-contracts, because again, they're assaulting you with one of their so-called contracts, quasi-contracts. A kangaroo court, a term descriptive of a sham legal proceeding in which the person's rights are totally disregarded, in which the result is a foregone conclusion because of the bias of the court or other tribunal. And there you go, there's a kangaroo court right there. The judge works for the state, the prosecutor works for the state, the police or witness works for the state. The vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, and the only witness all represent the same party. And since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws, the state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. That's exactly what's going on, folks. They're nothing but a bunch of thieves. Okay, they're Roman cult thieves. My contact information, sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. Email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profiles, Sovereign Living and Sovereignty International. My Facebook community page, I deleted it. My private group on Facebook called Sovereignty International is being deleted. It takes time to ban 17,000 people off your private group, and I'm not going to let Facebook profit from my hard work. My Yahoo private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants. My Google private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants. Follow me on Twitter at EngineerWin. Follow me on vid.me. Well, no, that's got to be removed. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International and BitChute. I've got a BitChute website too. And these legislative courts, okay, remember, it's all statutes, right? And so if it's a statute, then it's a statute that sets up the so-called court, right? And so if it's a legislative court, they can only give advisory decisions, right? That's true. It is noted as significant that the act constituting the court dispenses with trial by jury, a provision which is distinctly upheld in the 7th Amendment. In spite of the 7th Amendment, with respect to the status of the court, the opinion concludes. While what has been said of the creation of the special function of the court definitely reflects its status as a legislative court, There's proprietary in mentioning the fact that Congress always has treated it as having that status. From the outset, Congress has required it to give merely advisory decisions. Under the act creating it, all of its decisions were to be of that nature. This is true at the present time. A duty to give decisions which are advisory only, and so without force or judicial judgments, may be laid on a legislative court, but not on a constitutional court established under Article 3. So none of these courts are Article 3. Okay, they're all legislative courts. They're kangaroo courts. It all falls under Roman law. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, civil law, Roman civil law are convertible phrases, meaning the same system of jurisprudence. That rule of action which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law, distinguishing it from the law of nature and from international law. Okay, so it's all municipal law. Check out my other videos, Bankster Thieves playlist, Roman cult playlist, bankrupt corporate so-called governments, bar members 1 through 3, do-it-yourself, how not to volunteer for the selective service in the draft. Some of these are playlists and some are videos, obviously. Martial law is here, do-it-yourself, no income tax, do-it-yourself, free mail, do-it-yourself, kangaroo courts, the Canada Border Pigs playlist. Okay, so we're going to get into a little bit of these articles in the Geneva Convention that we talked about earlier. This is Article 27. Protected persons are entitled in all their circumstances to respect for their persons, their honor, their family right, their religious convictions. Okay, so I don't know if you want to participate in their satanic religious ceremonies, but I've heard of people that go in there and basically say to the judge, I don't wish to participate in your religious ceremony. And they kick them out of there. And they at all times shall be humanely treated, shall be protected against all acts of violence or threats thereof, against insults and public curiosity. And so, again, this is what rules they have to follow under their military occupation. And so we need to understand that so that we can get a remedy. Okay. Women shall be especially protected against any attack on their honor, in particular against rape and forced prostitution or any form of indecent assault. You notice they've changed everything to sexual assault now or something like that. They don't call it rape anymore. Without prejudice to the provisions relating to their state of health, age, and sex, all protected persons shall be treated with the same consideration by the party to the conflict in whose power they are, without any adverse distinction based in particular on race, religion, or political opinion. Okay, so again, you have a right to your political opinion. Matter of fact, when the FBI came to see me, that's what that FBI agent said several times. He called it my political opinion. Yep, for sure. Article 33. No protected person may be punished for an offense he or she has not personally committed. Okay, well, again, it's a Sestake trust. So they assault you for crimes created by their Sestake trust. And so, again, have you committed that? Collective penalties and likewise all measures of intimidation or terrorism are prohibited. Well, when that cop is sitting there yelling at you because you don't want to give information to him, well, that's definitely intimidation and terrorism. Okay, and their uniforms and their colors on their police cars, all of that stuff is designed to be intimidating. Okay, so they are terrorists, literally. Pillage is prohibited when they steal your property, and so that's an argument for people that are having trouble with child protective services and that kind of stuff. They're pillaging. Okay, so they're stealing your property. Reprisals against protected persons and their property are prohibited. Again, it's reprisals, okay, especially for people with CPS. But in Canada, the pigs steal people's vehicles. I know people, several people up there that have had their vehicles stolen by the pigs. And so that's, again, reprisals and pillaging. And that's Article 33. Can you spot the terrorists? I can see them. They're obvious. That's all designed, all of that, these uniforms, all of that stuff is designed to be intimidating and and terrorizing. The use of violence and intimidation in pursuit of political aims. The occupying power may not compel protected persons to serve in its armed or auxiliary forces. No pressure or propaganda which aims at securing voluntary enlistment is permitted. Okay, and so then that's why they cannot do conscription. See my do-it-yourself how not to volunteer for the selective service in the draft video. This is Article 51 of the Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilians in time of war. You could also use this as argument to where they can't force you to work for the government. And so, and that's what I would do. Article 52, no contract agreement or regulation shall impair the right of any worker, whether voluntary or not, and whenever he may be, to apply to the representatives of the collecting power in order to request the said power's intervention. Okay, this is a good one for filing fees. Any kind of regulation, their court rules, okay? They're assaulting you with their rules. It doesn't matter what their rules say. All measures aiming at creating unemployment or restricting opportunities offered to workers in an occupied territory in order to induce them to work for the occupying power are prohibited, okay? That's another good one where they can't force you to work for the government. And when I say that, when they force you to produce a social security number, that's a number for government employees. And so that's a violation of Article 52. This is Article 66. In the case of a breach of penal provisions, the occupying power may hand over the accused to its properly constituted non-political military courts, okay? And so on conditions said courts sit in the occupied country, courts of appeal shall preferably sit in the occupied country, and so non-political military courts, okay? They're all military, and whether they're non-political or not is hard to say. This is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 1, Clause 3. The state party to the present covenant include those having responsibility for the administration of self-governing and trust territories. Okay, that's talking about occupied territories right there. Shall promote the realization of the right of self-determination, which shall respect the right in conformity with the provisions of the Charter of the United Nations. International Covenant on Political Rights, Article 14, Clause 1. All persons shall be equal before the courts and tribunals in the determination of any criminal charge against him or of his rights and obligations in a suit at law. Everyone shall be entitled to a fair public hearing by a competent, independent, impartial tribunal established by law. Okay, so again, these bought and paid for clerks, it sounds to me like they can't have bought and paid for clerks. Okay, so again, that's a violation of their international agreements. In all cases, the duration of the period which the protected person accused of an offense is under arrest awaiting trial or punishment shall be deducted from any period of imprisonment awarded, okay? And I've heard of people that that didn't happen. So again, that's a war crime. My blog, sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email is engineerwin@yahoo. My YouTube profile, Sovereign Living and Sovereignty International. Facebook community page. My Yahoo private group. My Google private groups. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Steemit. Follow me on BitChute. So, Article 7, the Rome Statute on the International Criminal Court. Now, the United States hasn't acceded to this, but most of the countries in Europe have, and Canada has, I can tell you for sure. So you're going to have to do some research for if you're over in Europe to try and find out if your country has acceded to this, because it's a very powerful tool. For the purposes of this statute, crime against humanity means any of the following acts when committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack direct against any civilian population with knowledge of the attack, okay? Enslavement, imprisonment, or other severe deprivation of physical liberty in violation of fundamental rules of international law. Torture, okay? Well, when they're putting on their kangaroo courts, gee, that sounds like a violation of the rules of international law. I mean, that's a violation of other articles in the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of civilians in a time of war of 1949. Torture, persecution against any identifiable group or collectivity on political, racial, national, ethnic, cultural, or religious gender, as defined in paragraph 3, or other grounds that are universally recognized as impermissible under international law. And so, again, When they persecute, like in Canada, they persecute freemen on the land. In the U.S., it's sovereign citizens. And so again, those are war crimes. Okay, torture. When I was at the Canada Border Pigs in their jail, the temperature was about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and they took away my coat. All I had was a short sleeve shirt on, so I was freezing my butt off. And so again, that's torture. And so enslavement, if you're in their prison, that's enslavement. I mean, there's also, you got to start thinking about what all this stuff is. War is business. Okay, that's what these Satanists do, is they're just in business. This is Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom either alone and in community with others and in public or private to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practicing, worship, and observance. In Canada, they're persecuting anybody that, as they call, a freeman on the land. In the U.S., they persecute sovereign citizens. When a judge is a bought and paid for a clerk, it's a satanic religious ceremony. They're persecuting you because of your wish not to participate in their Satanism. Okay, again, it's not a neutral and unbiased judge. When the judge is a bought and paid for a clerk, it's not a fair and regular trial. When it's civil, they're saying it's criminal, and it's not a fair and regular trial. This is Article 70 of the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of civilians in a time of war of 1949. Protected persons shall not be arrested, prosecuted, or convicted by the occupying power for acts committed or for opinions expressed before the occupation or during a temporary interruption thereof, with the exception of breaches of law and the customs of war. So really, if you think about that, they cannot do anything to you unless you breach the law or customs of war, which basically means you engage in warfare against them, and which means a breach of the peace. Nationals of the occupying power who, before the outbreak of hostilities, have sought refuge in the territory of the occupied state shall not be arrested, prosecuted, convicted, or deported from the occupied territory except for offenses committed after the outbreak of hostilities or for offenses under common law. See, and this is really revealing here because they're basically saying that they know that martial law supersedes common law. Okay, that's what they're saying. Or for offenses under common law committed before the outbreak of hostilities, which according to the law of the occupied state would have justified extradition in a time of peace. And then no sentence shall be pronounced but by the competent courts of the occupying power except after a regular trial. Okay, and so again, they have to have a neutral and unbiased judge, and it's got to be a regular trial. And that's Article 71 of the Geneva Convention. So, I mean, none of these trials are regular trials. They're kangaroo courts. They're prejudged from the beginning. Warning, this is the standing army you were told not to tolerate. Yeah, there it is, right? That's military uniforms. Just because it's got police on the thing. It's a military force. Article 53, any destruction by the occupying power of real or personal property belonging individually or collectively to private persons or to the state or to other public authorities or to social or cooperative organizations is prohibited, except where such destruction is rendered absolutely necessary by military operations. Well, there shouldn't be any military operations going on. And so, again, that's another one. Article 33, collective penalties and likewise all measures of intimidation and terrorism are prohibited. Military uniforms are designed to be intimidating. The carrying of guns by their code enforcers is intimidating, especially if they have laws preventing you from owning guns. If the pig yells at you because you're not cooperating, it's threatening and intimidating. And Article 31, this is a great one. No physical or moral coercion shall be exercised against protected persons, in particular to obtain information from them or from third parties. Gee, that sounds like that could be used against the NSA and the CIA and maybe Facebook, hey? Yeah. And Facebook is on a big agenda right now to get people to put up real pictures of themselves and all sorts. Got people to put up their real name instead of a pseudonym. I mean, it's all. They got no business finding out information about you. The bankster thieves want to get Social Security numbers. I mean, that just doesn't end nowadays. And so that's all violations of Article 31. It's about time we started challenging this stuff. This is Article 33. No protected person may be punished for offense. We already talked about this. And so they're assaulting you for crimes with their fraudulently created Sestakay trust. In Canada, they regularly seize people's vehicles that are not registered. Okay, so that's pillaging and that's reprisals, and it's intimidation and terrorism. Everyone, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, everyone has the right to own property alone as well as in association with others. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. Okay, and your rights are considered property. And so any restraint, however slight, on another's liberty to come and go as one pleases constitutes an arrest. An illegal arrest is an assault and battery. The person so attempted to be restrained of his liberty has the same right to use force in defending himself as he would in repelling any other assault and battery. Each person has the right to resist an unlawful arrest. In such a case, the person attempting the arrest stands in the position of a wrongdoer and may be resisted. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. That's Article 9. And so they can't just arrest you because they feel like it, okay? And then there's the war crimes, okay? This is Article 8 of the Rome Statute for the International Criminal Court. The court shall have jurisdiction in respect to war crimes, in the particular when committed as part of a plan or policy. The purpose of the statute, war crimes, means grave breaches of the Geneva Convention of August 12, 1949, namely any of the following acts against persons or property. And there's a whole bunch of them. I'm just listing the ones that people here might be able to use. Extensive destruction and appropriation of property not justified by military necessity and carried out unlawfully and wantonly, compelling a prisoner of war or other protected person to serve in the forces of the hostile power. That's why they don't have the draft anymore, and that's why they can't have the draft. Willfully depriving a prisoner of war or other protected person of the rights of fair and regular trial. They do that all the time. Unlawful deportation, transfer, unlawful confinement. Okay, when they put you in their jail, sell you into slavery, put on their kangaroo court, that's unlawful confinement. Other serious violations, intentionally directing attacks against individual citizens, not taking part in hostilities. Civilians, intentionally directing attacks against civilian objects that are not military objectives. Intentionally launching attack and knowledge that such attack will cause incidental injury to civilians or damage to civilian objects. Destroying or seizing the enemy's property unless such destruction or seizure is imperative. Declaring abolished, suspended, or inadmissible in the court of law the rights and actions of the nationals of the hostile party. Yeah, right. They do that all the time. That judge sits up there and says, I can do anything I want in here. Pillaging, okay, when they steal your property, committing outrages on the personal dignity and regular humiliating and degrading treatment. For the purpose of the statute, genocide, okay? And this is important because they're committing genocide against state citizens, genocide against sovereign citizens, genocide in Canada against freemen on the land. For the purpose of the statute, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. As such, by deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Okay, so that sounds like if you're, say, what they call a sovereign citizen or a freeman on the land and they steal your children. Okay, gee, that sounds like violation, genocide under paragraph 7. I think this is 6. Paragraph Article 6E of the Rome Statute for the International Criminal Court. And if they steal your children, you don't want to register them, that's a form of genocide. Crime against humanity means murder, extermination, enslavement, deportation, imprisonment, torture, sexual violence, persecution, or any other inhumane attacks or omission that is committed against any civilian population or any identifiable group, and that at the time or in the place of its commission constitutes a crime against humanity. Genocide, we already talked about that. And a war crime means an act or omission committed during an armed conflict that at the time, the place of its commission constitutes a war crime. Okay, so this is the Crimes Against Humanity and War Crimes Act of Canada. Okay, many countries have passed these acts, and so they've adopted the the Rome Statute on the International Criminal Court, and so this is Canada has, and this is taken from this Canada Act, and so again, once you understand that, you can charge these whores, clerks masquerading as judges, with war crimes. Okay, every person is guilty of an indictable offense who commits genocide, crime against humanity, or war crime. Every person who conspires to or attempts to commit is an accessory after the fact in relation to or counsels in relation to an offense referred to in subsection 1 is guilty of an indictable offense. Punishment: every person who commits an offense shall be sentenced to imprisonment for life if an intentional killing forms the basis of the offense, or is liable to imprisonment for life in any other case. So they take it very seriously. The definitions of this subsection apply to the Act. Conventional international law means any convention, treaty, or other international agreement that is enforced to which Canada is a party, or that is enforced and the provisions of which Canada has agreed to accept and apply in an armed conflict in which it is involved. International Criminal Court means international criminal court established by the Rome Statute. Okay, so this is the Crimes Against Humanity and the War Crimes Act of Canada. So other countries, especially in Europe, are going to have very similar acts, and you got to look them up, and you got to use them and go after them. You know, I want to use a nasty word here, but YouTube will restrict me, so I'm not gonna. Anyways, war is when your government tells you who the enemy is. Revolution is when you figure it out for yourself. Do you know who you are? When liberty and freedom are at stake, your silence isn't golden, it's yellow. So what we need to do, I've been getting a lot of people from Europe who've been contacting me about stuff that's going on with getting their children stolen and their property stolen and all of this stuff. And so they need to start bringing up war crimes. We all need to start bringing up war crimes because that's exactly what they're doing. And we need to bring this stuff to an end. This is all war crimes. When people start figuring it out, well, we need to put this martial law to an end is what we need to do. But in the meanwhile, we can still get a remedy with these war crimes. Anyways, thanks for watching, and have a great day.